Morning.
All right.
Nice to see so many of you so early on a Thursday morning.
Or afternoon or evening, depending on where you're tuning in.
Yes,
Yes,
true.
right? We've got a big virtual audience as well. Well, I am thrilled to be here with Gordon Thompson to dive into the solution sets across our portfolio. Should we dive right in?
I think we should dive right in, and I'm delighted to be here with Denise Lee as well.
All right, so look, we know around the world, there's a lot more regulatory pressure that continues to increase. We have to the tune of 130 countries that now have committed goals around net zero to meet. But if you go and ask a lot of the organizations, how are you going to get there? You still see a vast majority of them looking a little fuzzy. We have some ideas on how we can do that with maybe scope 1 and 2. And then you talk about that big scope 3, if you know scope accounting. A lot of the measurement gets a little bit fuzzy. We know that CIOs and C-suite across the globe are looking at this is a big business imperative. And then there's this little thing called AI that is blown up over the last 12 months. And we know that when it comes to the network and it comes to the compute power and performance, it's going to hit this industry far more and the role this industry has to play. So as we think about how we balance all of these things, I have yet to meet an organization that has a set-aside large sum of money to go solve all these sustainability strategies and plans. They are being asked to do it inside the envelope of their current business. They're being asked to come up with the business cases to maybe do a little bit of incremental funding. But it's always this balance of how do we take sustainability and all these goals we need to get to. And I balance that a lot of times with how do you get something better, faster, and cheaper? Usually you can pick 2 out of the 3, but it's very rare to get 3 out of the 3. You can get 3 out of the 3 when you take into consideration technology. And it's actually technology and innovation that's going to help us leapfrog and not just do the incremental changes and incremental savings to energy efficiency, but it's actually going to help us get to those bigger commitments. So at Cisco, we're looking at this in a lot of ways. We're looking at overall strategies and our plan for possible to help our customers with clean energy transition and regenerative ecosystems. We know that we need to decarbonize, and that's not just a Cisco problem, that's an all of us problem. We know that we need to build products that are more circular designed. We know we need products to come back in order to more responsibly recycle, reuse, and remanufacture them. Right? Our supply chain is number 1 or number 2 ranked in the world, depending on the year. And we're able to do all of these things so that 100%, 99.98 to be exact, percent of our products can be recycled, remanufactured, and reused. And if you don't believe us, right outside, these halls are our sustainability zone, where we are actually doing active teardowns of our product. But when it comes to the products and the solutions in our portfolio, this is where we want to deep dive today. When we think about across our engineering portfolio, we have 4 key focus areas. Energy management, which is how you measure. And if you don't measure anything, you can't fix it, you can't put a plan against it, you can't credibly get to net zero. So we're working across our portfolio to standardize on 5 key energy metrics. There are a lot of new advancements and commitments we've made in the last couple of months that we are able to share with our customers and partners at this point. We then translate that into software, and with software for sustainability, the immediate impact that can be had for our customers and partners to apply the practices of observability and visibility into those insights and actions lead us to automation with software. With modernizing hardware, it's everything from the materials that go into our products, right, the embodied carbon itself, to the transportation of that product, how we use it, and what we do after. We're also looking at power distribution. We're also looking at liquid cooling in the future. And all of these things include a broader ecosystem of IT and OT across the campus and the data center space. And then, of course, business transformation, right? We think about as-a-service models. We think about how we're going to monetize and how do we make sure that the ROI and the TCO cost of going greener or refreshing at the right time or implementing these software policies makes sense for our customers. Gordon, can you talk to us about this shift in innovation strategy at Cisco?
Yeah, by all means. You know, Cisco's like every other company. We don't have an extra budget to go and set aside to be able to become a more sustainable company. We have to think much more purposefully around our innovation strategy as a company. We have to do it within the same budget. And the reality is in Cisco over the last few years, you've seen us move from what I would say is a traditional innovation strategy, which was always about feature development. How can I put more and more and more features into every single one of my products. We were always focused on just trying to build products that way. The reality is when we put all of these features into products, our customers were only adopting on average about 17% of those features. So that wasn't really a very sustainable innovation approach. We've moved to what we call a much more purposeful approach to innovation now. And that's allowing us to be more strategic and thoughtful in terms of how we're building our products and what we're putting into those products. And the reality is what you see Cisco doing now is being purposeful really around these 5 areas. Sustainability being at the heart of it. How do we build more sustainable products? But at the same time, we're very focused on things like AI and data to make our products even more efficient and more effective as we move forward. We're recognizing that to be more sustainable, we can't be proprietary based and we need to be more open and we need to work with the ecosystem, while obviously we're looking at other things strategically like security and sovereignty. So our innovation strategy as a company has shifted significantly from what was just purely a feature development strategy into something that is much more purposeful. And that's true of our acquisition strategy as well. If you look at this slide, this is specifically based towards the business that I operate in, the service provider business, but it's true across the whole organization. These are purposeful acquisitions that Cisco have made over the last few years, and they really break down into 3 key areas. They break down into an area where when you look at the green areas, these are really around driving sustainable and power efficiency into our product portfolio. When you look at the light blue areas, that's around automation in terms of how we do things quicker. And when you look at the dark blue icons, that's around data and observability. And really when you take data and observability together with power efficiency, you start to create something different. You start to create something special in terms of the innovation that we can drive to our customers. And this data thing becomes a big part of the broader strategy as well when we go back to telemetry.
Yep, and that data thing I am so excited to tell and share at this conference that across energy management, the 5 metrics you see at the bottom are currently being standardized across Cisco's portfolios. They're being leveraged at a web capability layer for APIs for customers and partners to draw from for your own platforms and dashboards. And these 5 metrics, we've pressure tested with many of our customers and partners, we believe will help baseline and solve most of the use cases that customers need to start their journey, to understand what their goals are for net zero, where they're starting, and then how they can start moving towards energy optimization to get there. So you'll start to see these across our existing platforms in a web capability layer, as well as a capability that will be built into Cisco Networking Cloud. This will be the foundation at which across all of our solutions, we continue to build. So that's the energy management platform side. Now think about the hardware, the software, and the solutions that are being built in the smart building space and the campus, all the way down to the service provider space and to data centers. So let's start with data centers. And we were just here earlier in other parts of the conference talking about what a big energy draw data center is going to be. If you had an opportunity to listen yesterday to our guest keynote speaker, the founder of Siri, data centers produce as much energy as the entire country of Italy. And that's only going up with AI. So if you think about Cisco's entire end-to-end portfolio, we need to know what's happening from the dashboard perspective across our networking and our compute platforms with Nexus and Intersight. We're driving energy optimization into these platforms. Yesterday, we heard from a customer that has successfully completed a DC microgrid for a data center. Yes, you heard that right. They have strategically located their data center next to renewable energy, and it is an entirely closed, off-the-grid DC microgrid for a data center. And they're measuring this, and now they're also producing more electricity than they are generating, or than they're using. If you look across the partner ecosystem for a hybrid multi-cloud world, we know that with generative AI coming, we're still going to need the cloud. We also know there's going to be more colo and on-prem needed. So we're building these various partnerships to make sure that we can modernize infrastructure and the application layer. We have security in mind. And we announced a really big partnership with NVIDIA and commitment on how we do this to future ready and future proof us for AI in going forward. And the requirements, Gordon, as we know, the challenges of this are not in any one key area. Everything from the operational silos to the cost of retrofitting existing data centers to getting ready for liquid cooling. We know that some of the chips that are coming in the future can no longer be air-cooled. So simple adding more power and racks to a data center is not going to suffice for AI. So what do we do? We have a power problem in our data centers. We don't have a space problem, although we can help solve some of the rack density there as well. And we look at some of our customer examples. This is another customer example that leveraged the UCSX chassis across their data center, and the overall reduction in footprint from a space perspective was 70%. Who wouldn't want to save 70% of space, right? But if you look at on the right-hand side at the actual metrics to operate that business, what we're seeing is an architectural shift from maybe 3 or 4 boxes in the future going to 1. And that 1 is not only more energy efficient, it's more powerful in performance. And yeah. Gordon, when I think about all the data centers, it needs to run on a network. And yes. I love what we're doing with our service provider networks. Can you talk to us a little bit about internet for the future?
I can indeed. And just finishing off on that comment there, back to in the data center, sometimes we don't have the budgets to do these upgrades. We've seen in a number of instances where the cost to move from older architecture technology into newer Silicon One technology, our customers are saving more every year in power and space savings than they are amortizing the cost of the project over a 5-year period. So from that point of view, there's real reasons why customers are making that shift now. But let's talk a bit more about where a lot of power is consumed, which is in the service provider networks. In Europe, the incumbent service provider in each country, so the largest service provider in each country, on average, is consuming 1% of all of the energy in that country. Right? When you think about how much energy they're consuming, they're thinking of 2 things then. They're thinking of how strategically can I be a greener company? How can I be better for the planet if I'm consuming all of that amount of energy? And secondly, they're saying to themselves, energy costs are really expensive. I need to find ways of significantly reducing the amount of energy that we run in our business. So we are helping our service provider customers thinking about how they reduce fundamentally their energy costs in 4 different ways. One is around network convergence. One is around what we call layer convergence. One is around giving them choice at the edge of the network with what we call service edge platform. And the final one comes back to that whole data telemetry conversation around how you use data better to make better business decisions. So I'm going to just click into each of these just to give you an idea of some of the things that are going on. First of all, around network convergence, what we're seeing here is traditionally when a service provider builds a network for 5G, they build a separate network at the edge of their network to accommodate all of that mobile traffic. At the same time, when they build a broadband network or a fiber to the home network, they build a separate network to connect all of those fiber cables from your home back into an aggregation point to feed back into their core network. And similarly, when they build maybe an enterprise or MPLS-based network, they do the exact same thing. So at the edge of their network, they have disparate networks that ultimately connect into one. The only place where all that traffic comes together is in the core of the network. And so obviously you're having to lay out many, many devices at the edge of the network to accommodate each network service. Well, what software is allowing us to do now with something called segment routing or segment routing, depending on how you say route or route, is allowing us to slice virtually all of those traffics independently, but through one box as opposed to through 3 boxes. And that's having a massive impact in terms of energy savings for our customers, service provider customers at the edge of their networks. And it's not having an impact negatively in terms of the performance they provide. Actually, when you have less boxes in your network, there is less points to go wrong, and it's actually improving overall performance. The second area we're focusing on is what we call layer convergence, and this is more in the core of the network. I mentioned earlier on that all of the traffic comes back to our core. Ultimately, that core is built by an optical network at the bottom that then connects into an IP layer above that. The optical network has always been terminated in its own optical network devices, transceivers that terminate that you have to power and manage, and that then connects into the IP layer above, the routing layer above. Well, Cisco's developed an optical pluggable, a ZR pluggable, that plugs an optic cable directly into the IP layer in the router. And that means you can get rid of your whole optical layer of the network. Now, many service providers in Europe are starting to do that. A couple of them have gone public in terms of the amount of energy savings they're saving in the core, notably Deutsche Telekom and Swisscom. And on average, in the core of their network, they're saving between 60 to 80% of the power consumption that they used to consume in the core of their network. So it's game-changing in terms of those capabilities. Thirdly, what we're starting to do is build services at the edge of the network. So rather than deliver TV services from the core of your network and drive them out across the whole of your network, we start to pre-position those services, cache those services at the edge of the network. It has a number of benefits. One, certainly when you're watching things like soccer on the television, you don't have the delay. You don't have the 2 or 3 second delay as you'd normally see as you deliver internet-based football services. There's nothing worse than getting a notification on your phone that your football team has scored and then seeing it 2 seconds later on your streaming device. So things like that we're changing significantly. We're moving more and more services to the edge. That means we don't have to stream as much traffic across the network, and that's saving on cost at the same time. And then the final thing, this game changer, is really around data and how we use data to drive better SLAs across our networks. In the past, or in this new internet-based world, there isn't really a way to guarantee traffic flows in the way that we used to do on circuit-based connectivity like MPLS. So what our service provider customers have been having to do is over-provision those networks to be able to accommodate with all of that internet traffic. What we can now do with data and our ability to see data from end-user device all the way to the application is start to build up probability statistics around how much traffic is required to be able to route that traffic. Customers can start to set, our service providers can start to set SLAs, and fundamentally that allows us to operate differently. And that operation is really now coming together where what we see is we build this platform at the lower level around those 4 key areas that I mentioned a minute or two ago. And our service providers then create what we call service factories or applications that they sell to their customers. And the beauty now is we can start to connect those together. And that means we're much more efficient in terms of the amount of bandwidth we require to use across the whole network. And if we're more efficient in terms of bandwidth, we're obviously saving energy costs and becoming more sustainable at the same time. So there's loads going on in the service provider space, in that core internet space, to change the game totally in terms of energy. But I know there's a lot going on as well on the campus and the building side as well. So would you like to talk about some of those, Denise?
Absolutely. Those service providers connect everything from the data center to the campus. Our Silicon One chip going across our switching portfolio is helping to accelerate that along with that energy savings. And when we look at the smart buildings and workspaces, one of the things when I come to the European region that is actually resonates even more with urgency here is the Energy Performance Building Directive. And with the European Union Green Deal, there are an estimated over 30 million buildings that need a retrofit to show above 15% energy consumption or energy efficiency in the next handful of years. And that number and that plan goes way up. If you're going to build something new, it needs to have a specific rating, right? You need certain certificates, and these permits are now coming down from the regulatory side. The good news is at Cisco, we have this end-to-end portfolio in the campus that we've been, quietly incubating and working on for many, many, many generations. But now in the opportunity to bring that together with the converged IT and OT space is more compelling now than ever. You have the confluence of a post-pandemic era of how do we work in these future offices? When do we go into the office? How many people in the audience go into an office 5 days a week? Exactly. How many go in at least 1 day a week? Okay. We're all navigating this new world. And energy management for a building, I don't know if you've ever been in a floor of your building where you might be one of 2 people in there, but every light is on and HVAC is on everywhere. We're trying to figure out from a networking perspective, how do we network energy the same way we network data? And how can we do that and connect it to the 30+ building management systems that are in most of these buildings? Yep. So these building trends between how do we get them, how do we get more and more energy to be renewable? Here, Cisco Live in the Netherlands enjoys over 90% of renewable energy in their grid. Not every country can say that, but we're all working towards that. The health and wellness, how much better would you feel if you walked into a building and it gave you the stats of the CO2 and the humidity and the temperature and the cleanliness and the filtration of the air that was flowing through there, especially in the flu season? So we're continuing to see more and more of this convergence. We're continuing to see more flexibility built into the spaces that are being developed as more and more buildings are coming online for retrofit. LEED and WELL standards the projects are going up and to the right in terms of exponential growth of the number of projects in the pipeline that are asking to be LEED and WELL certified. And what happens at the building level that needs to be considered is those data and power networks. Back in your hometown, one of the buildings I love to talk about is 22 Bishopsgate, because they started building a 62-story building during the pandemic and realized people are never going to work the same way again. So they tore it down, and they started from scratch with Cisco at the table as a way to incorporate the technology in the backbone. So one BMS system connected to the 9K backbone, which we got to work on together, can help simplify the entire building. So everything from the security cameras to the HVAC systems to the blinds and the solar on the screen, on windows, can all work together to provide better energy efficiency for the entire building, which now inhabits about 12,000 people on a daily basis. Right? And so when we think about the real estate environment, globally, we are at an all-time high vacancies in office space, 16%.
Just one other thing there as well. Most of us are now starting to deliver green energy into our buildings, either through solar or other wind or other ways. As we bring that energy into the building, it comes in as DC power.
Yes.
And what we do in traditional buildings is we convert it to AC power to distribute it around the whole building. And then when we get to the plug point, we turn it back into DC power again for us to connect into. There's a 20% conversion loss just in that conversion from DC to AC and back again. And the great thing about delivering power around your building across the data network means that you never have that conversion. It comes in as DC, it gets distributed as DC, and it comes out the plug point as DC. So straight away, before you start to do all of the intelligence that you're just about to talk about, straight away you're saving 20% of your energy consumption in the building just by distributing power across an Ethernet cable as opposed to across a power cable.
That's right, and all of the devices you see here are PoE enabled for exactly that reason, right? So as we're continuing to build out spaces, that distribution of power through PoE and the power of PoE is something that we are pushing in our smart building offers. When we look at the story of Penn 1, this building has been retrofitted kind of first across Cisco's portfolio, and so we get to enjoy some of the data points. Over an 8-month period, Gordon, they've saved 36% on average. Right? Every second, there are 8,000 data points coming off of all of the sensors that are built into many of our devices. So it's not that you're having to put extra sensors everywhere. They are built into our devices today. And that becomes the opportunity for us to not just save in the ongoing operating costs. We actually saved over $3 per square foot in the CapEx deployment because of the labor. Because cabling PoE is something technically you and I can do because it's safe. Right? And so we're continuing to work on our portfolio of DC power distribution. We're continuing to work on our telemetry and the UX of Cisco spaces and just creating a better environment so people are wanting to come back to the office. And we're doing that across Cisco's entire real estate footprint around the globe. And to your point, we're doing that through the power of over Ethernet. And you're going to say, hey, this isn't anything new. We've had this for almost 20 years, and you would be absolutely right. We have. We've had this for a long time, but here's what's interesting. Remember one of the building trends we showed up front is that continued convergence of the IT/OT space? Well, guess how many manufacturers we have today who are manufacturing LED lights with PoE enablement? that are doing monitors. If you can look over at what ThinLabs has done just outside in sustainability zone, you can have an entire computer built into a monitor, all PoE enabled. Solar on blinds, same thing, PoE enabled. Now you can have a small microgrid of blinds that have solar going right into automation of blinds, automation of desks, and your LED lights. So we're working at how do we connect all of these new devices that are coming online to make rooms even more modular than they are today. So you're not even having to drill holes in walls because you can have things that are configurable, all with DC distribution. And for a fun energy lesson for those who may not be as familiar with the benefits of direct electricity and why we're only deploying a lot of this now, brief history lesson. AC power has been around a lot longer. It's safe. It's in all of our legacy systems. And depending on where you are in the world, you've got 110 in the US, 220 out here. We know these are our traditional power systems, and that requires the conversion rates that you were talking about. In the data center, there's at least 3 or 4 times of conversion to get it to the rack. DC power has been around for a long time as well. Thank you, Tesla. And PoE, 20 years. 380 volt DC has been around also for a long time. And for those who don't know, 380 volt DC is natively what is in our wind, solar, and fuel cells. But who here feels really comfortable managing and deploying and cabling 380 volt DC? Exactly. We're really excited that Cisco continues to be on the innovative side of this, and the same engineers who developed PoE 20 plus years ago have been part of patents and many dozens of patents around new technologies that are helping to change standards out there. And there's a new class of power called Class 4 fault managed power that has been put in the National Electrical Code in the US, which sits under the Fire Protection Agency, right? So it's all around safety. And this continues our innovation around power distribution. What's interesting about Class 4 fault managed power, it's about 450 volts, Gordon, with unlimited wattage, and it's touch safe.
Okay.
So it's Class 4 power, it's a new class of power, but it's touch safe. Now, this is not something Cisco is actively selling today. That's not the point. The point is there's innovation out there, and there's new things on the horizon that are written in the standard bodies that are starting to change. So remember, if you were around the industry back when PoE came out and how long some of that has taken to be adopted across all of these different ecosystems, now imagine we have something that's better, faster, and cheaper in the standard bodies. How quickly will this be deployed? Now we need that efficiency, right? Now cost is at a premium. And so it's really exciting to think about innovations that are coming up across not just our hardware and software core part of our portfolio, but in the industry when we look at power distribution and what comes next in DC power. When I think about where we are today and where you might be in your journey today, how many feel really comfortable with the baseline of energy management and measurement off of all the telemetry in your networks? For those not in the room, there's no hands raised. So please start this journey with us with energy management as we continue to deploy these core pieces of our telemetry and make that available for all of our customers in the install base and our platforms. Keep in mind, it starts with measurement. And as we deploy these different solutions, more and more use cases will become available as new innovations become available, as new products become available, right? As the Silicon One chip bleeds across the rest of our switching portfolio, as new software capabilities come up that have immediate deployment for always ready, not necessarily always on. And we're doing that more and more with our Cisco Networking Cloud Vision. But when we think about what we're doing to prepare for tomorrow, we see a lot of data centers now asking the question about liquid cooling. We're working with a lot of the co-location providers around the world because we know we need liquid cooling. No more raised floors, no more huge chillers, direct-to-chip liquid cooling. And when I think about what's coming in the future, we know that Cisco's not just a technology provider and partner for you, but we are actually devising programs and incentives for every step in that life cycle across the journey. Whether it's stimulus funding with global funding offices around the world to help you take advantage of the $11 trillion of global stimulus money across 15 countries that we've identified to help on this specific journey. Or our refresh program, that's 21 plus years strong. We want the old equipment back. And the newer generation of gear, as Gordon laid out, in service provider, for data centers, and in the campus, is far more energy efficient, and we can help deploy that immediately. Between our partner specialization program, which deployed in April 2022, now has over 1,000 partners in this space to help us adopt at speed and scale. So I think about where you might be. I would just simply ask you to get started, right? Whether you've set your sustainability goals and targets or not, understand where your company's goals are, because I guarantee you have a role and responsibility to play in meeting your customers, or meeting your organization goals around sustainability. Understand where the data starts, right? In any place of the network, we have this information available to share with you, so you have a good, credible baseline of where you're starting and what actions to take from there. And then last but not least, understand where your next refresh cycle is. Let's help you do the calculation and simulation of, could you potentially save energy? Could we take that product back? Where's the value proposition for your organization, not just in the initial purchase, but the ongoing operations? And there's no shortage of things that can get you started anywhere on this journey. And so if there are papers you want to help bring back to not only your leadership chain, but other functions and disciplines within your organization, I guarantee at the CXO level and your board level, they are trying to understand where your company is on this journey. Whether it's you want the details of this slide, all of these slides and much more are available in that solutions ebook. And there is a report that Intel did last year that actually helped bolster up why the role of CTOs and CIOs are going to play such a fundamental role in this transformation of sustainability. And I think with that,
we will say thank you. Thank you for joining us at the session today. Much appreciated for spending some time with us, and hopefully you can see that it's not just about what we're doing today, but it's about how we're partnering in the future to think differently about how we're going to transform around sustainability. Hope you enjoy the rest of Cisco Live. Take care.
Take care.